Now, South Africa used the momentum of the coming anniversary of the founding anniversary of the African Union, Africa Day, last week to launch its diplomatic charm offensive. Minister of International Relations, Naledi Pandor, visited Egypt and later joined President Cyril Ramaphosa in Equatorial Guinea to participate in the African Union Extraordinary Summit. Egypt is a country of more than 100 million people. Its GDP grew by 5% in the first quarter of 2022. Joining us now to explore whether South Africa's charm offensive will deliver tangible gains for the two countries, international relations expert Dr. David Monyae. Very good evening to you. Thank you for your time. Can we expect some gains for the country?
Oh, indeed. This is ongoing discussions that started last year, and this meeting was expected to further strengthen growing relation between Egypt and South Africa in key areas, economy, political, as well as cultural. And it's a build-up to the annual meeting of head of states of the AU. And therefore, I think these are central countries, South Africa in the south and Egypt in the north, and both play a critical role in peace and security on our continent.
International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor spoke to how, there's a joint commission between South Africa and Egypt, which was established many years ago, but it has not been serviced as well as it should. What have been some of those factors when it comes to the relationship?
I think, as you are aware, there has been political destabilization in Egypt with coups and violence that took place 5-6 years ago. And this has been going on. Now it's relatively peaceful, and the situation, as it stabilized, I think it opens space for both Pretoria and Cairo to sit and deal with the issue. One core issue that South Africa has actively participated in is to try to bring peace between Egypt and Ethiopia, including Sudan, over the Nile Dam issue. And as you are aware, Egypt is also quite critical when it comes to the Middle East, particularly the Palestinian and Israeli crisis. And South Africa piggybacks on Cairo, given its pivotal role in that region, to ensure that that conflict comes to a resolution.
We know that Minister Pandor's next stop will be in Equatorial Guinea, where she will join President Cyril Ramaphosa at the African Union Extraordinary Summit. What are some expectations on that front? Because, of course, we know that the continent, as well as South Africa, is trying to build capacity.
The last year has been one of the worst years for the AU. Democratic gains has been somehow eroded. Almost 5 countries have had military coups, mainly in West Africa. And therefore, the AU this year, as it sits, it is to look at core issues, peace and security, and dealing with these coups, which really brings back the continent to yesteryears, where dictatorship, misgovernance has been taking place. We also have conflicts in a number of other areas. We have Mozambique crisis, the DRC with the M23 in the eastern Congo, with those countries in East Africa and Central Africa being involved. So there's so much that is to be handled. At a global level, you have Ukraine crisis with huge implication for the continent, ongoing COVID crisis. So all these issues really require the EU to sit down and come up with solutions and how to assist poorer African countries.
Just yesterday, at the annual Thabo Mbeki lecture delivered by Nigerian scholar Professor Toyin Falola, we heard a great deal about the African Union's challenges. You made mention of the coups that were also spoken to last night. But the other aspect was some of the aspirations of the AU, and also speaking to some of the criticism that has been leveled against the AU in its inability to deliver and assist the continent. What are your thoughts around that, those challenges and the loopholes that are still within existence?
Firstly, it was an excellent speech that was delivered last night. I concur with most of the issues presented in terms of the weakness of the AU. It's work in progress. We've spoken about endless conflicts, the state and status of women, which more work needs to be done across the continent. The youth with unemployment going skyrocket across the continent. The issues of climate that we need to look into. But most importantly, I think there is a need to speed regional integration through infrastructure building, that countries need to beef up their efforts to build infrastructure that speak to each other, to increase trade among ourselves as Africans. We're sitting at 16% trade among ourselves, which is very low in terms of global standards. It's supposed to go to 50s, 60s, and above for us to really feel the power of the continent. With 1.2 billion people, with more unity and common norms and values, I think we'll be able to project our voice, our weight, as we enter into agreements with other countries all over the world. And the other issue is the lack of unity within multilateral structures. The Ukraine crisis demonstrated to us that Africa is no longer speaking with one voice, and that in itself is a worrying factor. However, the number of achievements that we also need to recognize, the number of institutions that have been established. All what is needed is to fund them. You have APRM, you have NEPAD, you have the Pan-African Parliament that sits here in Johannesburg, and so many other institutions that we need to beef them up with funding as well as skills in terms of training our people.
Absolutely. And one of the other factors which was also spoken to, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the impact it has on the global oil price, and that is going to be felt very painfully on come the 1st of June with the 25 rand a litre on the price of petrol increase. That was also something that Minister Pandor was speaking to in terms of the talks with the continent's leaders.
Indeed. I think for us, I think the crisis goes beyond the question of poor Africa suffering from hunger because of the crisis in Ukraine. I think at the heart of the matter is to do with the geopolitics, that Africa, like many other regions of the world, rejects the advancement of NATO in the Eastern Europe. I think something that we are seeing happening where NATO is taking a global role. They played a destructive role on our own continent in 2011 with the destruction of Libya and the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi. And we're seeing these negative movements into a border with Russia. While we condemn any war, any interventions into any foreign country in terms of violation of its sovereignty, we also are quite mindful of the concerns of the Russian Federation in terms of advancement of NATO into its borders.
Very well. Thank you for your time and analysis there, Dr. David Monyae, Associate Professor of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg.